Well, it's pretty late in the night. It's 1:43 a.m. in the morning, but here I am doing another video. And this is because I was looking at Lois Lane's arc, the arc of the bullet, as they call it, the bullet arc. And there's so much more to that story, and even Lois Lane's motivation for uh, trying to clear Superman's name. There's a lot going on in there. And so we're going to take some time and actually look at that. Right now, you can always leave your comments in the chat section. It's late in the night, so I don't want to talk too loud. But you can leave your comments in the chat section. And we're going to talk a little bit about, a couple of things that I think if you've been, if you are in any kind of relationship with anyone, I think these are important points to point out as we move forward. So let me get to it. I'm in screen share right now. Going into screen share, and I'm going to talk about several instances in Batman v Superman where Lois Lane interfaces with Clark Kent. But let me just point out one part of the movie where I thought was very impactful. I'm just going to go through the narration of what happened. So Superman, who's Clark, he comes down to Lois and he says this to her. He says, I have to go to Gotham to convince him to help me. Lois is clueless as to who this person is that Superman is talking about. So she says, who? And Superman does not answer her. Instead, what he does, he continues with what he was saying, or he has to die. And you can see that this is a disgusting idea in Superman's mind. Superman is not pro-killing. He doesn't want to kill people, and he doesn't like killing people. And that's why he hasn't killed Batman already. Or else he would have killed him already. So that thought is very disgusting to him. And all the more so because he just had a conversation with Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor was proud to talk about manipulating Batman into doing certain things. Now, here for several times in this movie, well, not several times in this movie actually, but there was a precedent before where Lois says Clark. She says Clark. She looks at Clark and she says Clark. Now she says it rather calmly and quietly, Clark, more like that. Not like how his mother said Clark when he was recapping to Lois the story of how his father died. And when he was saying to his father, you're not my dad. You're just some guy that found me in the field. His mother said, Clark, right? She yelled at him. This is not the case here with Lois. Lois is saying it quietly, but she's in disbelief. She's watching him, as you can see clearly. She's progressively becoming more and more perturbed, okay? She starts off here. She's like, who? She's just asking a question here. But now here, as she looks at him, she's now, after he says he has to die, she is particularly perturbed by that, okay? You can see the distress in her face. She's particularly, this is actually stressing her out, okay? And then Clark says something else, which just completely sends Lois crazy. He says, no one stays good in this world. And if you look at the reaction of Lois to that, look at her face. She is freaking out majorly. The side of her mouth is caving in. Look at that. She is right now in extreme horror because this is just something she never foresaw Superman being, a murderer, someone who's going to just kill somebody. So right now, Lois is on the verge of almost a mental breakdown when she hears that. You know, her whole eyes are, look at her eyes are welled up with water. You know, she is freaking the hell out right now. But she's trying to stay calm. And you can see the horror in Lois's face on hearing that. All this time, she's been trying to preserve and protect his integrity. And now, this is just unbelievable, hearing Superman say that. terrified her. So, I continuously talked about Lewis's contribution to protect Clark's integrity. And it seems as if Lewis is coming from very noble intentions. But if you really were to examine what transpired in Batman v Superman, you would realize something that if you've ever been in a relationship with anyone, you would realize what she's actually going through. And I thought this is something so real that I just wanted to share it with you guys, because I think it's a character building moment as well for each and every one of us. And so I'm going to actually show you what I'm talking about. So when we first visited Lois in Batman v Superman, the first time we saw her was she was introduced in Nairobi, Africa. She had come across there to cover a story. And she had gotten this exclusive scoop to deal with a General Amaja. And she was asking him questions to try and figure out if he was a terrorist or not. She had gotten this exclusive. Her usual photographer was replaced by another individual. Huron was replaced by an individual who went by the name Jimmy Olsen. And I do agree with all those people who had the idea that Jimmy Olsen, that guy was not Jimmy Olsen. He was going under the cover of a guy named Jimmy Olsen, but he's not Jimmy Olsen. I think you guys are absolutely correct, and I'll tell you why. He wasn't called Jimmy Olsen by the CIA. They called him. There was Talon. I think Talon was his name. His code name was Talon. Talon is down. And if you're a CIA agent, you're not going to go by your actual name when you're undercover. So Jimmy Olsen had to be the undercover name that this agent was using. Clearly, he wasn't the photographer, because he walked up on the scene. He was like, Jimmy Olsen, photographer, obviously. And clearly he wasn't, right? So if you thought that Jimmy Olsen didn't die, really, they didn't really kill Jimmy Olsen, they killed someone who was under the cover of Jimmy Olsen, you'd be 100% correct. Anyways, going back to what we're talking about. So she goes in to get this scoop as a reporter. She's interviewing the general, and all hell breaks loose. Okay? She goes in to do this interview, which was supposed to be an exclusive, and she ends up in the middle of a melee, part of which she doesn't even fully understand what just happened. And Superman comes through, saves her, but then there's lots of questions after that whole melee, because there's a lot of dead people, people who are burnt, people who are dead. And so when we see her, Python, so Talon was down. Talon is the guy who was, I think, was going under the code name Jimmy Olsen, and the cover name Jimmy Olsen, and Python was, the team that went in to recover any innocence in the middle of that. And so when they see Lois Lane, she has a book in her hand, and she tried to comfort the people, and she's staring up at them. And you can see the guilt in her face, because she does not understand how this interview went extremely disastrous. I mean, this was supposed to be an exclusive interview. That's what it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be this. And she found herself in the middle of this disaster because Superman gets drawn into it. And apparently it looks to her, she's not sure what happened, but it looks to her like she doesn't know the full story either, because she's been indoors with Amaja. She didn't know what happened on the outside. So that haunts her. And we see this a number of times. We see it a number of times in the movie. It haunts her because of a number of factors. The number of factors is Superman has now been implicated, and there's a tribunal for him because of what happened in Nairobi, Africa. And someone came and testified against Superman in Nairobi, Africa. But Lois Lane, she particularly feels responsible for what happened. She feels like she is the person who caused this whole incident to happen. And so she feels that there's blood on her hands. It's strange because Lex Luthor used that saying when he was talking to Superman on the top of LexCorp, where he talked about, you know, the world needs to see how fake you are and the blood on your hands. And so Lex Luthor was literally trying to paint the picture that Superman was a bad guy by having a false witness for Nairobi, Africa, and setting him up there. But in the process, what he actually did was have Lois suffer guilt and feel dirty and make her feel like she had blood on her hands. Literally here, it's beautiful, the figurative expression, blood on your hands. This is literally what's happening here, right? So when she sees that, she feels dirty. But before she could cleanse herself, she finds the bullet, a bullet that went into her journal. And it's interesting that when she's bathing to clean herself of the dirt that she feels because she feels guilty, look how she's huddled together. Look how she's huddled together there. She's got guilt. She feels dirty. But the bullet is the thing that might clean her. The bullet is the thing that could redeem her. And so she's holding that bullet in her hand while she's in almost a fetal position inside of the tub, the bathtub. And I find that interesting. And you can see, again, figuratively and also literally, she's trying to wash the blood off her hands, right? Now, here's the interesting thing that's, if you've ever had shortcomings in your life, you literally, for me, it's, my battle with online porn and that kind of stuff. But if you didn't want to do something and you ended up doing it and then you regret it and you feel terrible about yourself, what's the next thing you go and do? You either go take a bath or you try to, comb yourself up and look proper. When you feel terrible, that's what you do, right? And it's just very interesting that this is what Lois Lane does. Now, the guilt that Lois Lane has is because of her trying to get this scoop, all this stuff happens. And she feels responsible for that. And interestingly enough, the bullet seems to be her redemption to show, to clear the air on what happened, as well as possibly her way of cleaning up what happened with Superman. So the world would see that Superman is he wasn't a bad person. But not only that she wasn't a bad person. She needs to try and redeem herself, and she thinks the bullet will redeem her as well, which leads to this really wonderful thing that happened. But before I go there, let me come out of here. So Clark Kent comes onto the scene and is talking to Lois Lane. And Lois Lane says something that's very, very interesting. And I get that. To me, it indicates her guilt, how she feels about the situation, especially when it comes to Clark. And as we move along in the movie, this theme is going to happen over and over again. She talks about consequences. She talks about what happened. She talks about the consequences of what happened. And then she says something very, very powerful. And if you've ever been in a relationship with anyone, it's a question you would continuously ask yourself. And she says, I just don't know if it's possible for you to love me and be yourself. And that's the guilt speaking from her. But also, more interestingly, she is wondering if she's a burden on this relationship that Clark and her have. That as much as Clark loves her and everything, that actually she's dirtying his image to the world, especially Superman's image to the world. She's kind of responsible for his image being dirty. And so she literally feels that guilt from that Nairobi incident and feels that because she was there, she caused him to get roped into her mess, her funk. And now he's suffering the collateral damage from having a relationship with her. I thought that's very, very interesting, because what she's saying is, I want Superman to be something that the world could love and appreciate. And I feel like I'm getting in the way of that. By you always coming into action to try and save me, you're literally kind of denigrating your name and getting yourself involved in situations you probably shouldn't get yourself involved in. And I found that very interesting that that's how she feels. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have been in relationships with people, but if you've ever felt that way, that sometimes, sometimes the person responds well and positively with other people. But when it comes to you, as much as you trying to say pretty much the same things the other people are saying, because you're probably so close to the situation, you're doing more harm than good trying to push the issue. And to me, this statement she made is pretty much summarizing that the fear that you're actually harming this person's life as much as you mean well, than helping their life. And I think this is the fundamental guilt that she feels inside, because she's saying, if I didn't go to Naromi, if I didn't tell him I was going to Naromi, if I didn't show up there when shit hit the fan, he wouldn't be in trouble today. And I feel like the whole Bullet story and the whole reason she's on this campaign to redeem Superman and therefore redeem herself is because she feels responsible for that incident that happened. She feels guilty and she feels responsible for what happened in Naromi. And you would be surprised. That's why the Naromi, Africa incident is so important to Batman v Superman, and why Lois Lane's arc in this story is incredibly important. And I'll show you more reasons as we progress along why it's so important. And I thought, on reflection and so on about this movie and so on, that, Lewis's arc is so underappreciated. It's not funny. And it's so real to what we actually experience as people. So I just want to highlight some more stuff about her, because to unpack Lois Lane is fantastic. It's if you're someone who really wants to learn about your own personal life and how you interface with other people. So she's carrying a burden of guilt, and she's really trying to redeem herself. If she redeems Superman, she redeems herself. She didn't cause this damage to Superman. She already caused all these deaths as far as she's concerned. She caused these deaths because she didn't check into this guy who was the reporter guy. She didn't know what was going on. She felt like she was responsible for the deaths of the people. She was responsible for the dirtying of Superman's reputation. She feels a lot. She's carrying a lot of burden, and she's trying to reverse that throughout this movie. Now we're going to see if she's successful or not, and you're going to see for yourself just how successful she actually ends up being. But I think that mindset she has in this movie and the burden that she's carrying goes all the way into Justice League. And I really love to see Zack Snyder's take on Lois Lane in Justice League, because I don't think we got the Lois Lane we were supposed to get when we follow through the arc of Lois Lane. I think in Justice League, there's a lot more deeper things going on with Lois Lane that they kind of diluted out or blotted out and made it a really stupid sort of, it was much more washed down. And it was really supposed to be something it was empty emotion. It was not the real thing. And I'll show you what I mean, because we're going to go there. So you don't have to worry about it. And the expressions on the actress's face are just priceless. So here, Lois Lane, she's now really researching. She's really falling after the Bullet, but she's concealed it from Clark Kent. Now, why would she conceal it from Clark Kent unless she feels guilty that she told him she was going to Nairobi, Africa before? This is implied, but that's the only way he could have found out that she was there. So she probably told him what she was going to do before, and that's how he was able to locate her. In this case, she's trying to hide stuff from him. She's not trying to tell him what she's doing. She's not trying to tell him her plans, because she feels guilty that he got implicated in her business. So she's trying her best this time not to get him involved in what she's doing. Because, like I said before, and as you can see in the above statement above here, she realizes that he's not, especially the image of Superman, is not benefiting by Clark knowing about what she's doing, first of all, and second of all, trying continuously to protect her, okay, because he loves her. And in fact, she literally says that when was talking to Perry White about the bullet, and then Clark came afterwards and said, you know, Lewis, why didn't you tell me about the bullet? And she did not respond to him. And he said, you know, you're digging up snakes, Lo. You know, that this could be dangerous. She says to him, that's the exact reason I didn't tell you what I'm about to do. It wasn't because she lives on the edge. Of course, Lois Lane always lives on the edge. It wasn't that it was so dangerous that she didn't want him to know. No, it's that she didn't want him to come saving her. She realized and learned very quickly that because he went and saved her, his reputation got hurt. So she's trying to protect his reputation. She's trying to reverse the effects of what happened in Nairobi, Africa. She's not going to try and get him involved as much as she can. She's not going to try and get him involved. But look how interesting the story unfolds and how she gets him involved anyway. So let's just keep it moving. And it's tragic when you listen, when you really go through Lois Lane's story and relationship with Clark. It's a very tragic story because no matter what she did, she could not change what she had already done. The act that she did in Nairobi, Africa, haunted her straight throughout the entire movie. You'll see what I'm talking about. So anyway, so she goes, you know, on the trail with the bullet. She finds out things from the Pentagon, etc. And she finally finds Secretary Swanwick. Secretary Swanwick, you know, he's high up. So she decides to go all the way to the top. Okay, she's relentless, as we all know. She's a fantastic reporter, very good investigative reporter. And she finds General Swanwick. And she's like, you know, General Swanwick, this stuff here can't be ID'd by the Pentagon. It's about time you tell us the truth about what was going on in Nairobi, Africa, which is a very interesting story in and of itself, okay? But we're not dealing with that. So what does General Swanwick say? He says, here's the truth. A reporter got greedy for a scoop and went where she shouldn't have. I like the point that he says she shouldn't have gone there. I think that's one of the things that makes Lois Lane feel guilty. So he's literally addressing her issue and he's hitting the nail on the head. She went for a scoop. She went where she shouldn't have gone. That makes sense. It continues. Superman acted as some rogue combatant to rescue her and people died. Again, 100% true. He didn't say that Superman killed people, but he was a rogue combatant in the sense that he has no business being in Nairobi, Africa at all. Okay, so in that respect, he is rogue. Now, whether he killed the people or not, it's a totally different story. But what he said as a factual statement is also true. Then he goes on to say, don't invent a conspiracy theory to put back his halo, nor yours. General Swanwick basically summarized what Lois Lane is feeling. She is feeling if she did not go to Nairobi, Africa, these people would not have died. And she feels like she's pulled Superman into a controversy that didn't have to happen. She feels like she's the root cause of all the problems that happened in Nairobi, Africa. Whether that's true or not, that's what she feels. This is why she's moving, to redeem herself and hopefully to redeem Superman. But she has to redeem Superman to redeem herself, right? And the guilt she feels inside. So that's what she's doing. Now, what's interesting is General Swanwick hit the nail on the head. Bam. He hit the nail on the head. But of course, Lois Lane, she is relentless nonetheless and desperate. And she ends up pursuing General Swanwick after. But look at the look on her face when he tells her the truth, because he really did tell her the truth. That is the truth of the situation. And he hit her bluntly, but he's a military guy, so that makes sense. When he told her that, look at her face. She cannot respond. In fact, she was left speechless. But that does not stop Lois Lane. It doesn't stop her. She is relentless, and she will come at you. And she had the humility and the audacity to chase him down still and still try to make that contact with him. And she actually acknowledges the things that he said. She said, I don't have a halo over me, Mr. Secretary. I went into the desert. People died. Notice she takes responsibility for her going into the desert. It's not Superman. She doesn't speak about Superman going as a rogue combatant to save her and people died. No, she owns it as her fault. And that's interesting because it's in a part way her guilt speaking, as if she's the cause of everything. She's saying, I'm the cause of everything. It keeps me awake. It should. Then she goes on to try and clear Superman's name. Once again in desperation, she says, if you think Superman's a murderer, throw it away. She hands him the bullet. But I don't think you think that. And that's interesting because he never said that Superman murdered anyone. And so these are just interesting things. And he takes the bullet and he goes away with it. Again, we get the guilt that Lois has within her that's haunting her about the whole incident. All right. And we saw that from the beginning. This is what's driving her. It's not just Superman's name being cleared. She isn't the Joan of Arc. She isn't the saint. She really isn't. In this movie, she is acting out of guilt and not out of idealism, as I thought she was acting. As much as she does want to protect Superman's ideals, this is not the reason she's doing what she's doing in this movie. All right. The reason she's doing what she's doing in this movie is because she feels guilty that she's caused everything that had happened. And she's trying to clean herself. She's trying to wash these things away. And it's very interesting that in the background is rain. And she's wet from the rain. You can see it from her hair. And again, a washing. She's trying to wash herself. And so it's interesting that the rain in the background is sort of subliminally giving us that message at the same time, which I find very interesting. So she gets away and she confesses her heart to him and she gets away with him. And so he gives her the information. He digs up the information and he finds it. And he tells her the bottom, where this bullet comes from, etc., everything. And after he tells her that, she's like, but it doesn't make sense. You said the ambush was arranged to frame Superman. But how could they know that he would show up? And then she stops, cold in her tracks. And she's seized up by the guilt when she realizes she's the one again that caused Superman to be framed. And literally, she's the one that caused Superman to get framed. And Lex Luthor goes back on to actually vocalize that later on when he says to her, you know, everything is just a straight line, and the road to Superman is the way to Superman or something like that is a pretty little road called Lois Lane. So Lex Luthor basically reemphasized the point that he knows that Superman comes wherever Lois Lane is. And so this just makes him more guilty. You know, when she gets to, you could see it in her face. She's like, oh my gosh, you know, and she finishes off with in the middle of the desert and she speeds off. And you could tell that this is the thing that's really driving her. It's the guilt that's driving her, that she's caused this whole entire mess. She caused all these people to die. She caused Superman to get, you know, this bad label. And this is the thing that haunts her throughout this entire movie. So when the moment that happens here, happens with the taxi cab and Superman coming down and talking about a guy that Batman has to die. She doesn't know it's Batman, but she literally loses her shit. Okay. She literally loses it. Look at her face here. She has lost it. Okay. Looked like she was almost getting a stroke because it didn't just get bad. Now it's getting worse. And if Superman didn't say what he said, she would not have gone down to Gotham. She wouldn't have taken a helicopter and tell Perry, this is not for a story. It wasn't about a story for her. It was about redemption. It was about cleaning her dirty hands. It was about washing herself of her blood that was on her hands. She felt very, very guilty about everything. That she felt she was the cause of everything that happened down in Naromi. This was all about Naromi. And God damn it, Everything she tried to do, you know, to preserve and just to kind of restore Superman's image. Now Superman, for whatever reason, is looking to kill somebody. That lost it. She never thought in her wildest, maddest dreams she would ever hear something like that. And so she has lost her shit. Okay. and and she has been fighting hard to just try and clean herself, purge herself, this guilt that's inside of her. And now Superman goes and says this. It's like the situation seems to get worse for her the more she tries to clean it up. You remember the Capitol bombing, and she was trying to tell Superman, look, there are people behind this stuff, and Superman wouldn't listen, and he, you know, didn't want to be Superman anymore. It seemed as if, let's go back to the top here, because I think this is very important. It seems as if what she said before, what she said right here, hold on, seems to just come back and bite her in the ass every single time. She's like, I just don't know if it's possible for you to love me and be you. And you can just look at her face right there. Just look at her face, man. I mean, she doesn't think this relationship can work. You know, have you ever heard somebody say, you know, that girl or that lady or that guy, they're not good for you. They're just going to bring you down. She feels like she's that. She feels like she's going to bring Clark down. She's going to destroy him. And she's going to destroy what he believes in stuff, because he loves her so blindly. He's just going to come to her rescue every single time. He's going to be the knight in shining armor. That's the shit that's going through her mind right now. And it's crazy. You know, I use expletives. Sorry about the curse words. But the point is, I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship, something like that, where you've been trying your best and, you know, you feel guilty sometimes. You feel guilty that this person, like when you're in their life, you feel like you're bringing down their life, you know, but they think they love you so much, but yet they're not being exactly themselves, and their character and everything and their image is being assassinated while they love you. And that's not what you want. You want people to thrive. You want them to do well. So this is so real to me. Like, I literally was in a relationship, something like this. And, you know, and I've learned how to let go of certain things and not feel guilty within myself and do things out of guilt anymore. But this is so real. This is real stuff right here that's going on the screen. And for some reason, you know, people who went in the cinema, they just couldn't see the real stuff that was going on there. This is as real as a relationship gets. And, you know, there's this guy, you know, somebody, you know, people, especially when you're with someone who has exceptional gifts, like they are great musicians or they're great at whatever they do. And you feel like you're kind of cramping their style because they love you, you know, and they're kind of almost like throwing everything away because they love you. It's one of the most damaging things. It's like, you know, they're damaging their career, or they're damaging their studies, or it messes with you, right? And every time you think and you always feel you're responsible for any negative thing that happens to them. Never mind, there's a lot of positive things that happen to them, but you just don't see those things. And I think, like in this relationship here, Lois feels so much that she's caused what happened to Superman and caused what happened to the people in Nairobi, Africa, you know, that right now she's reflective on that. And it's interesting because Lois was, you know, this Pulitzer Prize reporter, always kind of bright and sprightly, and, you know, didn't give a care. And she was, you know, still gentle and sweet, kind of person, but, you know, always, you know, getting that favor and just bubbly and just keeping it moving, right? If you saw her at Man of Steel, even when you see her in the beginning of BvS, that's what she's kind of bubbly to people. But it's strange how at these kind of deep, subtle moments, we can see what she really feels about her relationship with Clark. And man, that thing bites her in the ass. So anyway, she rushes down to Gotham because she realizes now, more damage control. I got to pull this thing in. I got to clean this guy. This guy got to be clean. Now this guy's talking about killing somebody. Oh my God, what happened? Right? She spoke with Lex Luthor before. So she's losing her stuff, right? And Clark is like, you know, no one stays good in this world. And she's like, no, don't say that, man. Look, I'm trying to get your image back on track because I need closure on this. I need closure on Naomi. So here she is now, you know, really completely here. She, you know, did all that stuff. Clark goes in to fight Bruce. And eventually Bruce is about to kill Clark. She comes in just in time to save Clark's life. Remember, Clark got to stay alive, right? Clark's got to be alive because remember what she said. I don't know if it's possible for you to love me and be you. It's like shit's happening to Clark that's just really, really bad, right? Since she's been with him, right? You got to understand where I'm coming from. So for her, this guilt is just multiplying. She desperately saves Clark's life from getting murdered by Bruce, okay? She gets a little break. She takes a spear. She throws the spear as far away as possible because that just jeopardizes her plan to clean herself because she's feeling guilty inside. And I'm surprised people don't realize why she even took the spear and threw it into the water is to purge that thing. You get what I'm saying? She's trying to purge it. She's trying to purge herself. And she's projecting. So she tried to purge Soups. She tries to purge Batman. She's trying to purge everything. So now she's purging their spear. She throws it into water. Cleaning. I need to clean myself. She's constantly trying to clean herself, bathe herself, wash herself, reset, right? And so she constantly feels guilty about the situations that's happening. And remember, all of this started in her mind because of the Naomi incident. Never mind, there was Metropolis incident and several other things that happened in the movie, including Capitol bombing. But the Capitol bombing was along the lines of the Naomi incident. She was on the course already, even though it didn't have anything directly to do with her. But the point is, she feels responsible. And for the life of her, she can't get it right. She can't fix it. Let's see what happens eventually. So now she knows she's the cause of Clark, you know, getting this bad rep as Superman. And Clark even becoming discouraged as Superman. And then the funny thing is, Lex Luthor uses her to get Superman. He literally tells her what's going to happen, and then he just pushes her off the ledge. Up pops back Superman, right? So whether she likes it or not, she's always going to cause Superman to come into the equation once she's around, because Lex Luthor's already connected her to Superman. Now, Superman puts her on the ground and goes back up to deal with Lex Luthor. And when he comes back down, he's talking crazy, right? He's talking some crazy shit, right? And she's like, no, this is not the way it works. Now, remember, here's the irony of the situation. She was trying to conceal all this information from Clark, you know, her research and all of that stuff. But ironically, Clark comes back to save her because of that same research stuff, which she knows more about it than he does. But so in the end, her guilt for, you know, her keeping Superman from being himself is not necessarily justifiable. Superman would help her because he loves her, but she should have kept in contact with him. But by doing all these things, all she did was exacerbate the situation. So let me say what I have to say about relationships. In a relationship, there's always going to be the pros and cons to things with people, whether it's a marriage relationship, brother, sibling, whatever. And a lot of times we get very hard on ourselves because it seems as if we're doing more harm than good. But just by being in a relationship with someone and being able to see the good and the bad in them and also to love them is really what counts. Sometimes you'll have a negative influence on them, or you would affect them negatively, and there's setbacks because family that's the way how family works, or that's just the way how lovers work, or whatever. So at the end of the day, don't be afraid to share your love with other people and maybe it works out well for them. Maybe it sets them back. But if you were coming from a sincere heart, you can learn, adjust to suit, and therefore be more wise in how you conduct. But always spread your love. Now, let's get back to what's happening with Lois Lane. So the last thing that happens here is a repeat of what happened. So she feels guilty here. Now, oh my gosh. So this is what she actually says to Clark. The last words she says to Clark before Clark speeds off to take on Doomsday. And Clark's reason for taking on Doomsday, in fact, even though he's weak and everything, and despite all the logic that Lois Lane's trying to tell him, you're too weak, Clark, and so on, Clark's reason for taking on Doomsday is because Lois, he wants to protect Lois from Doomsday. So she yells out, no, please, Clark. And she screams out Clark. She sounds not annoyed like Ma Kent or Martha Kent did to Clark when he was in the flashback. He was talking to Lois about where his father died, and he's telling his father he was not his father. No, this plea is desperate. If you ever go and listen to it, she desperately doesn't want him to do this. And the reason she doesn't want him to do it is because of the very reason she said from the very beginning, I don't want your love for me to keep you from being Superman. And ironically, his love for her is going to cause his death. So here she's desperately trying to get some logic into his head. He doesn't want to hear it, and he's gone, okay? And those words creep back at her. You know, I don't know if it's possible for you to love me and be you. And it's going to haunt her because she caused Superman's death. This is what she's thinking in her heart, in her mind. I've been this guy's demise. I've been the Eve to this Adam here. What the hell is going on? She feels like she has caused his death. That's why she cried so ridiculously over and over again after she saw his lifeless body. She failed to clean herself. She failed to clean him. And yes, after he died, she was able to report on Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor was put in prison and stuff. But she is still a bundle of guilt. And that's what's going into Justice League. And they didn't quite get that right. And, you know, clearly she didn't go back into reporting afterwards. She was just a mess because she's been trying to clean herself. And this was the opportunity to clean herself. Now, yes, Superman's name was cleared, you know, and then people found out that the lies that Lex Luthor said about the, you know, the people in Nairobi, Africa and stuff, that was cleared. So she was somewhat cleared. She was somewhat cleansed. She lost Superman. She lost the person, this very statement that she said, and she feels like she was the one responsible for having him dead. If this Nairobi incident never happened, she never went to Nairobi, Africa, as far as she's concerned, he'd be alive today. That's in her mind. Guilt. And so this sentence here comes back to haunt her, and she could see it happening. She could see it occurring. She started to see it. And he wouldn't listen to her. He just bypassed her. You know, there's a couple of times where he just never engages with Lois Lane. You know, the one where he was talking about, you know, killing Batman was one of them. This is another one where he just kind of gives her a rose and he just sticks to I love you. And she can see bigger beyond that. She can see beyond the I love you thing. And she's like, this is not looking good. Okay. And it's really interesting because women have that kind of foresight, by the way. I mean, I've been assessed by my mom. I've been assessed by my ex-girlfriend, and they hit it on. But my brother's pretty good at it too. My younger brother, he can assess me pretty well as well. And it's interesting getting feedback from people who can assess you because that gives you a bigger picture. And sometimes you can't see that. And clearly Clark couldn't see that. So, you know, so when you saw her in the funeral home and she was looking up at all the planets and then she got the ring and she was almost ready to cry and she kind of held it back. And when she put the dirt on his coffin, she was the last person. She was staying there. It's because she was guilty. She felt guilty. That's why she hung around so long. It's not just because she loved him. Oh, no. She didn't get to clean herself. She didn't really get that purging. She lost the most precious thing to her. And she still feels she's responsible for killing it. So she's not cool at all. Okay. And that's what's going into Justice League. And that's why I said that what they did with Justice League was not good enough. It wasn't good enough at all. And, it's just really interesting looking at the psychology of these characters, because I could talk about Lois Lane and BvS maybe forever and show you the talking points. But here's the thing you guys need to understand. And I've learned this over the years, and I'm learning this even now. The people you love, sometimes you really make a mess of things, and it seems as though you can't redeem yourself. But what you have to understand is you have to continuously remind them that you love them in spite of their choices. And it's all about telling people you love them and showing people you love them as well, of course, but telling them you love them because you try your best. The whole thing, all you can do is try your best. I've made, if you've watched my video, Let It, right? The song Let It, it's basically saying, look, man, just act out of love. Don't try and force the love. Don't try and give your perception of what the person needs. If the person asks you for something, try and get it to them. If you know it's not good for them, then don't get it for them. Let them get it to themselves. But at the end of the day, try to act in love and compassion and care. And I can tell you this because, I'm actually in a situation where that's the most important thing. Life is not about how long you live. It is more about the quality of life you have. And the quality of life can only come from if you share these values: love, joy, peace. These are the eternal things that really count in this life. And as I keep on saying on my channel, and I hear different people, even before I've been saying this, and even after I've said this, saying the same thing. I don't care how religious you are or not religious you are. At the end of the day, these are the things that count in life. And to me, this is what makes BvS so much more sweeter to me. Just talking about Lois Lane's story in some more detail with you guys. And tonight, I don't know how many of you guys are even watching this video. But let me go to the chat section and see what you guys are saying in the chat section. Before I call it a day. Oh, we got 3 viewers. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Maybe the others will view later on today. Wow. My God. I didn't know this was all going on in here. Okay. T&J Ayala, man, I haven't seen you in a long time. There are no answers, only choices. Absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with you. You have to choose. You have to choose. You have to choose which direction you want to go in your life. T.J. Alice says, pardon the pun, Lewis keeps Clark grounded. Yep, that boy loved that lady, man. He loves her really. He would do whatever. And that, unfortunately, she could see past that and realize, look, you have to care what people think. It's not just you love me and that's all. Yeah, he's tied down, boy. She got him on the lock and key, huh? Go Film says, hey, shout out to you, Go Films. T.J. Alice says, kind of like David giving up his football dreams for his wife in Unbreakable. It's later we realize there's resentment in his life, cluelessly. There you go. Sometimes that happens as well, where, in a relationship, you kind of lose yourself, which is what she's saying, basically. That he's so dedicated to her because he's got a different set of priorities that he may have lost sight of what he's about, what Superman's about, and why you have to protect that ideal, that image of what Superman is. And so she was trying to redeem that. But of course, again, I think she's speaking from more guilt than anything else because of what transpired in Naomi. And I don't know if that's the first time Superman saved her. Obviously not, because we saw him save her twice in Man of Steel. But was it twice or was it 3 times? I can't remember. But suffice it to say, I think that she feels guilty this time because it literally had negative consequences to it. The other times that happened, people didn't see it, or even if they did, it had positive consequences to it at the time before all the information came out about what was happening in Black Zero, right? Go Film says, everything you say about BvS are valid answers to Ralph the Movie Maker's video called Reasons Batman v Superman Sucks. You beat every argument he made. More people need to see your videos. Gee, thanks, man. But you know, I'm just coming from literally this movie intertwines with my personal life. Like that's why I love it so much, because I literally can identify with this movie, because real life situations that have happened in my life, this movie literally highlights those things. And I just feel like this movie was made for me. So, you know, that's one of the things that, for me, Batman v Superman is a beautiful movie. I don't care what anybody says. You know, Justice League has some depth in it, but it doesn't truly realistically. That's why I said Batman v Superman is a very realistic movie. It is an absolutely realistic movie, and it has a lot of a depth to it, because what really happens in real life, this movie really highlights that. You know, it's not about trying to sort of superficially in Hollywood style harmonize with people, you know, for harmonization's sake. No, this thing gives you the good, the bad, and the ugly of, and the good and the bad and the ugly feelings that accompany these things. But it doesn't leave you just kind of dangling there. No, it's actually suggesting to you also, and I guess Justice League was going to sort that out as well. It suggests to you ways to progress, especially in terms of Superman and what Superman did, and then how he affected Batman afterwards. Because remember, Superman also lost hope. Batman started the movie without hope, right? He got hope and then he lost it, right? And in the Metropolis incident, we saw him feeling hopeless and powerless and stuff. But when we look at Superman, he was progressing through the movie quite well. You know, he was controversial in nature. It was all good. And he was still helping people and stuff like that. And he was looking at Batman. But he lost hope leading up to, more importantly, leading up to the big explosion that happened in Congress, in the Capitol. And that broke him. And what broke him seems simple to some people, but it wasn't. What broke him was the fact that he couldn't save those people. And he felt that he should have been able to do so. And it seems simple, but it is actually something that happens in our everyday life. You know, you always say coulda, woulda, shoulda. When my dad died, you know, a couple hours before that, he and I had a phone call. And he was like, you know, son, I don't feel too good. And I was like, God is in control, Pops. God is in control. That's why I kept on telling him. I couldn't get down there. I could have probably. I wanted to stay over the night before. See, coulda, woulda, shoulda. So I kept on going through my mind saying, I coulda, woulda, shoulda. I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I kept on hitting myself with that. And it makes you feel in despair. It makes you feel hopeless. It makes you feel depressed when you go with the coulda, woulda. It wasn't meant to be. Right? Exactly the same way with Superman. Superman went into the coulda, woulda, shoulda, and that discouraged him. Of course, he was right there to see everything blow to smithereens. And, you know, again, he makes this attempt to help mankind. Once again, there's this controversy that comes out of it, right? Lois Lane knows he would never have seen that thing, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda wouldn't work. It was just what it was. He doesn't know that. Same thing with you and me. There are situations which are very overwhelming that can suck the hope out of us, especially if you're trying to help people and things seem to be getting worse. And I've had that situation happen to me. And you always think you're this positive, inspirational figure, and you learn that you can be somewhat narcissistic, negative, and even downright a bully. And what I'm basically trying to say is that when the reality hits you, now you have to wonder if you're going to walk the path of hope or not. And in the case of Superman, he eventually, on reflection, began to walk back that path of hope. Still using Lewis as his anchor, not an anchor independent of Lewis. Like my anchor for hope is independent of any human being now, you know. But nonetheless, that's where his hope lay. Because Lewis always supported him. Not understanding Lewis also has a guilt complex. That's why she's actually doing that as well. That's driving her even more. But nonetheless, it's beautiful. Now, Superman, because he regains his hope, is able to give that hope to Batman. And ultimately sacrifices his life I would say he was a little bit hasty in what he was doing. Should have probably calculated and rested up a little bit more, like Lewis was suggesting. Lewis was giving him some really good advice. He just didn't take it. Now, Lewis is probably beating herself over the head about coulda, woulda, shoulda. The same thing that we all do. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I should probably coulda stayed away from Nairobi, Africa. Shoulda stayed away. All right, cool. But at the end of the day, hindsight is 2020. So you can't go. If you've learned from your past mistake, that's what counts. You know, be there for people when they need you and love them. You know, and do the best you can. That's all you can do, and learn from your mistakes. And that's what she had to do. But of course, that was going to be much more difficult to do because Superman was personalized to her. She knew him as Clark and everything, and he's gone. Okay, so I know that's going to be devastating for her. Goldfin says, truly, I really like the scenes with Clark and Lewis. Very well written movie. I absolutely agree with you. It totally vibes with me and some of the real life experiences I've had in my life. So for me, it was a perfectly written movie in many respects. No Film says the DC was doing so good until WB looked at Marvel and fired Zack Snyder so that Justice League can be Marvelized. Yeah, man. You know, I'm not gonna bash Justice League. It was a solid movie. You know, I went and saw it 10 times in the cinema. I loved it for what it was. But yeah, Zack was gonna go a lot deeper. He was gonna go a lot deeper with the characters for sure. And he was trying to finish off a trilogy that would have been, you know. So that's why we need the Snyder Cut. So hashtag release the Snyder Cut. That's the reason why we want the Snyder Cut. And you guys know that now. T&J Ayala says The Family Man with Nicolas Cage also presents these kinds of choices. Choices. What choices are you talking about? I kind of lost here. Go Films says, oh, The Family Man. Yes, I know The Family Man. Yeah, the TV show. Oh, Nicolas Cage is the guy who does The Family Man. I didn't even know that. Oh, that's cool. Like that. I actually like The Family Man. And they're basically Texans, I think they are. And they're from they're mostly Republicans, I guess. It's cool movie. That movie, a television series. Yeah, I was watching. Did I watch pieces of it tonight? I can't remember. Go Film says, ironic how people say Marvel characters are more relatable, yet the DCU is extremely relatable. I think again, I think they say it's relatable because how they view comic book characters. And Zack takes the deconstruction route, which is reality, realism, true realism for these DCU characters. So I think because he doesn't play too much to the Hollywood sort of entertainment kind of way how things are done, he's more of an indie filmmaker, in my opinion. And his style, you know, especially for this DCEU, was about keeping it grounded and as relatable and relationship wise. You know, like, you know, Batman v Superman could easily be just a like a movie like Sully, or it could be a movie like Snowden. It could be a movie like to me, let me be honest with you guys. Sully, Snowden, let me see, another movie based on a true story. Those kinds of movies are basically what I think Batman v Superman and Man of Steel are. Batman v Superman and Man of Steel is almost like a documentary kind of film with, you know, really a lot of intimate moments, which are not really documentary level, but nonetheless. So there's this dramatic element about it that's very, very real. And to me, you know, if you like Sully, if you like Snowden, then you should, if you can take off your, you know, rip off the band-aid of, you know, partisanship and listening to the collateral noise around you, you should be able to enjoy these movies. Yes, you have superpowered beings of epic proportions, but again, the power and the epicness of these superpowered beings are within the physics of what would happen if you had a superpowered being like that. So everything feels very realistic in that respect. And the way how Zack Snyder does his CGI as well, for the most part, is realistic. Sometimes the CG moves a little too fast for my taste, but if you are a meta human, I guess that will happen sometimes. That will happen most of the time, you know. So So I see the DCEU as extremely relatable to me personally, just in my journey as a Christian, etc. Um, Other people will say Marvel characters are more relatable. I guess they're thinking of what they think a comic book movie is, that the characters are not taken too seriously, that they're light, they're fluffy, and they're supposed to give you kind of a superficial sort of feel, and they're really great for their action and that kind of stuff. So I think that's where they come from with them, the characters being more relatable. And then in a Hollywood sort of way, you know, embellish the character, give you the same cues to laugh or the cues to cry. You know, their pathos is very, to me, it's not never really something substantive. I think the earlier Marvel movies had a little bit more substantive value than the later ones that we've had now. TNJ Alice says, same here, Anson. BvS is my life. Kind of hard to understand, though. TNJ Alice says, for others to understand. I think if you haven't progressed as a person, well, I don't know. You could have gone through these things and still bash the movie, because I feel like once you view something through a certain lens, you're going to be dismissive of a lot of things in it. Like, look at the stuff I just talked about with Lois Lane. This is something that I'm sure a lot of people didn't see. I didn't see it myself until, you know, today, and realized she was operating out of guilt. And the Naomi incident was pivotal. You know, if you didn't see the entire Naomi incident, you know, that's why, you know, don't tamper with Zack Snyder's films. The theatrical cut kind of sells that short, right? But if you see the Ultimate Edition, what the director intended, now you can get all the subtlety and stuff within, and why she's so hell-bent on, you know, following this bullet trail to see what else comes up with it, because her redemption lies in that. Now, the sad thing about it is she sort of partially redeems herself, but the very thing she was trying to preserve and, you know, sustain, she loses it anyway, which is Clark, which is Superman. So it's one of those sad, tragic stories. And she's obviously not fully cleansed. She doesn't feel fully cleansed. She still feels dirty. It's very, very interesting. Even at the end of the movie, when she's looking up at the planets and stuff, you see when she takes the dirt, she digs her hand into the dirt properly and takes up a piece of dirt and puts it down in the soil. And to me, it's symbolic. I mean, I may be reading more into this. To me, it's like she's putting the dirt on him again. She's like, I'm putting this dirt on you. I got to clean up this dirt. This is not finished. It's like her chapter, she hasn't been able to get closure like she really wanted to. Yeah, she caught Lex Luthor. Yes, Superman's name is cleared, but he's dead now. So that's not what she wanted. And so, you know, and you know, what she said about, you know, him, you know, not being himself. Well, he's dead now because of her, you know. So it's how you look at these movies are very important. Again, this is a thought that goes through my mind quite regularly, you know, for different incidences and things. I'm feeling like, am I the cause of this person's demise? You know, you always do that sometimes. You reflect on yourself and you wonder, you know. TNJL says, you know, Go Film says true. Zack Snyder made DC believable. I just believe not only to me believable, but I believe very relatable for me, people like myself, okay, who are reflective, and they study, what they're doing to other people, what they're doing to other people's lives. People who want to make a real impact and make a change, they can use these movies to do so. And even the detractors and all these people have been speaking the very content of these movies continuously. So it's either they just have a malice or a bad, they just feel don't want to acknowledge anything that has to do with Zack Snyder, whatever, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. For me, is it carried on? That's what matters. I'm gonna be glad when Zack Snyder does the Fountainhead, because I think the Fountainhead pretty much nabs that in the bud and talks about that. And Zack Snyder pretty much knows that, to make a movie that's smart, intelligent, this day and age where there's blockbusters and stuff, Sucker Punch is a very intelligent film. And to make a movie where you have multiple meanings for one saying, literally you can see it move down different threads, that kind of thing is just awesome. And the script writing and everything, and the directing and everything is beautiful. But anyway, Go Film says Marvel movies are popcorn flicks and DC movies are art. Not trying to bash Marvel, but just saying that's how I see it. I actually agree with you on that. And not just any art. I think art that evokes change. I don't think that it's emotive art. So what happens is you're going to actually either actually love that art or you're going to hate that art. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a strong feeling about it. It's going to imprint something on you. And hopefully later down the road, you're going to actually have the ripple effect where you actually go about doing something positive because of it. Zack Snyder's films always force people to act, to have a voice. And it's interesting that I wrote a song called Voice in 2014 where I was inviting people to express themselves, speak out. And it's very interesting that Zack Snyder's movies literally coincide with what I was saying in that song. And it's basically saying the same thing. Speak out. You have a choice. You can determine your future, no matter how limited it may look. And I feel like those, you watch Wonder Woman and the impact Wonder Woman has had. You look at Man of Steel and the impact it had. And, you know, when we talk about xenophobia now, we know what we're talking about. Man of Steel talked about it from way back then. BvS took it back up. But there's many other things Zack Snyder contributed to. And one of the most important ones is it's not about doing something to get a result. It's about doing something because it's right. Stay with the principle of the thing. Don't look for the outcomes. Stay with the principle of the thing. The Snyder Cut movement is not about outcomes. When we were defending Justice League, it wasn't about outcomes. We were happy to get a good outcome. It's about the principle of the thing. And so once you stay with the principle of something, I feel that that is one of the most powerful things in his films, actually, today. To date, that's what makes his films, I think, powerful. All right. TNJ Alice says Unbreakable, Children of Men, Man of Steel, BvS, The Last Jedi, etc. all speak to my soul. Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I haven't gone and seen Unbreakable again. I want to watch Sucker Punch sometime again. Rewatch that. But they're not just, to me, they're not just action flicks. They actually have a story to them. They actually have drama to them. They actually have elements of theater in them that are not necessarily the orthodox way how people conduct theater. And I find that very interesting. I like that they're all very original in how they think and put forward the cinematography. And everything about them is awesome because of that. I like that Zack Snyder used a different cinematographer for each of his films. You know, so I just thought that was beautiful. Go Films. I hope Zack Snyder knows that there are people out there like us who understand his movies and appreciate them. Yeah, I think he knows. You know, you guys can go up on Vero. I have now a cell phone at smartphone. Finally, I have a smartphone, but I still have to, I think, update it. I have to update the operating system on it. But I'm going to try and get Vero and pull it in. I also want to get my WhatsApp up to par on it. But yeah, I want to get the Vero so I can actually, you know, have some questions with Zack Snyder concerning some of the themes in his movies. You know, Sucker Punch was, people don't know this, and Zack Snyder actually said it though. Sucker Punch is kind of like a culmination of all the movies he did so far. So there's a lot of things Zack Snyder says in his movies. You know, it's many different layers to what he says in his movies, and he even said it on Vera that he likes to have double meanings to things. Like one thing means this, it also means this. So he likes to do that. And I told you, when you're reading the Bible, it's the same kind of thing, you know. TNJ Alice says, I'm not sure Zack wants that kind of responsibility, in my opinion. What responsibility is that again, TNJ Alice? TNJ Alice says, Go Films. Not quite sure what that sign is. You're pointing up to Zack. Not too sure what responsibility you're talking about. I know he's working on some other film right now, or 2 films or something like that. But you know, that's why I appreciate Zack Snyder. Okay, don't worship him or anything. I love there's tons of directors I love. Okay, because of the films that they gave us. Ridley Scott for Gladiator. Okay, love Ridley Scott for Gladiator. I love. Tell me the director's name for Blade Runner 2049. Love that guy because of Blade Runner 2049. I also loved the director who did um, Valerian, City of a Thousand Planets. Love that movie. Okay, I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm gonna go back and watch it again. Um, I mean, look. My point is that I love movies. The director comes second. The movie is the important thing. And when you put out a piece of work that can stand on its own and stand the test of time, it's cool to be the director that did it, but it's really the work that's important and not the director. You get what I'm saying? The director comes secondary to the work. So for me, it's all about the work and what it says first. And then I'm glad and I'm appreciated to the director for directing a film that gives these kinds of things. And I give the director all the credit and all, you know, those screenwriters and all the other people working on the film, all the credit in the world for putting out the piece of work. But really, at the end of the day, it's the piece of work that's important, you know? TNJ says, to reassure his fans and all, you know, there's been a lot of stones thrown at him. You know, that's TNJ, that's what I'm trying to say. You do the right thing because it's right. You don't do it for an outcome. He didn't make these films because he that he was doing it for an outcome. He wasn't doing it for an outcome. He was doing it because he loved it and it was the right thing for him to do and the message he had to send. And so how people want to react to his films after that and to him, he has no control over. What he has control over is making the films, putting it out there for people to see. And that's a different paradigm of thinking. You're not going to let something stop you from doing something because the outcome turns out to be worse than you expected. No. If it's the right thing, you do it. And that's what Zack Snyder teaches us. And he literally said that in his movie as well. So even though Superman ended up dead at the end of the film, he did the right thing, right? And that's the important thing. So that's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. Like the Snyder Cut movement, regardless of whether we get, you know, Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League or not, we're pressing, and we keep on pressing harder and harder, and that's what you have to do. Go Film says, what do you think are the reasons they call Zack Snyder a terrible director? I just can't see it. Again, I mean, you could be able to see it from the other side of the table. Again, this is not something that you can't see. Go Films, you're a very smart guy. I'm sure you can see this. People had certain expectations for these movies. Zack Snyder is not a director who is going to just give you every single expectation you want. He has a point behind what he makes. Every movie he makes has a point behind it. It has a purpose. It's based on an opinion he's sharing with you about life. So Zack Snyder is not just going to flippantly give you what you want, like the MCU does, give you whatever you. I want to see Batman knock out Doomsday, for instance. Zack Snyder isn't going to give you that, right? Because he's making the movie for himself first, and then for everybody else. That's why I said when you guys see The Fountainhead, whenever Zack Snyder does The Fountainhead, or just go and watch The Fountainhead. Okay, go and watch The Fountainhead. It's an old black and white movie. Look for it. You might see parts of it on YouTube. You'll see where Zack Snyder is coming from, Patty Jenkins is coming from, etc. Okay, and you and I need to do the same thing. We need to come from that perspective. We're not doing things because we want feedback and praise for them. And that's what the point behind Superman. Superman wasn't doing things for people to give him praise and stuff. He was doing it because it's the right thing to do. Right? And that's what we have to do. Because most of the times, if you're a visionary, if you're someone who is doing the right thing, or you standing up for people, whatever, you're not seen as a good person. Look at, like I said before, now he's getting contracts with Adidas, but Colin Kaepernick was blacklisted for kneeling for the national anthem. This is the guy that started the whole movement with his kneeling for the national anthem to protest, you know, mistreatment of black people in America, right? Just recently in Aretha Franklin's funeral, Stevie Wonder said something that was beautiful, and he's right. He said, Black lives matter. All lives matter, but Black lives matter. They're part of all lives. But people treat Black lives as if they don't matter. Mexican lives matter. People who immigrating into the country, their lives matter. Muslims' lives matter. You know, the point is you cannot treat these people like they're not human. You know, and we can go on and on and on. You know, dogs. You know, we talk about certain animals that are just mistreated and stuff in the United States of America, and other animals are treated well. You know, we can look at all of that. Okay, because these lives matter. Every single life matters. So let's treat every single life like it matters. You know what I'm saying? But Stevie wanted to say something else. He said also, which I thought was really nice. He said that we need to make love great again. We need to make love great again. And I thought that was just beautiful, because he's right. Love. And I'm not talking about sexual love. A lot of times people confuse sexual or romantic love with a man, with a woman, as if it is love. No, there is that love. Now, that's important, okay? You know, if you are a husband and a wife, you know, and you guys have romantic love and all that stuff, that's cool. Nobody's knocking you on that. But we're talking about agape. We're talking about philios. We're talking about the love for brethren, the love for family, the love for people. That needs to be cultivated, because once we love, we will care, and we'll actually do things out of love. I love my mom. You know what I'm saying? And that's all I got to say. I love my brothers. You know, they're the people that are left in my life that are still alive. You know, and we just never know when any one of you, or even myself who's talking right here, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. You don't know if you will know if I'm alive. You don't know if this is the last video I ever give you guys. You never think those things. You never think. You take it for granted. You can't take it for granted. Right now, you guys have families. They may be sleeping in their beds or whatever. Do not take your families for granted. Every precious moment you have with them is a special one, because you just don't know what the future brings. So take advantage of it. And so you'll never have to say coulda, shoulda, woulda. Huh? Like Lois Lane. So that's what I want to say. You know, I hope that you guys have a good night. And I spent quite a lot of time on this Lois Lane thing, but I thought I would share it with you guys, because I feel these are real things, at least for me in my life, and I decided to share it with you guys. This is why I love these movies. This is why these movies mean more to me than maybe somebody else who doesn't have those experiences in their lives, or maybe they have had it, but they got hung up on certain things, how a character was done and how they view a character to be. And so they don't think the character is their character or whatever. I don't get caught up in those things. I actually watch a movie for what it is. You know, don't get me wrong, there are movies I just don't particularly like. Doesn't mean, again, this is the most important thing you guys must understand. Just because I tell you a movie is not a movie I like, doesn't mean that that movie doesn't have value in it. Listen, I've been a researcher. I have had to sit through lectures that are boring as hell in terms of the lecturer relaying the information across to you. But the information is fascinating. The information, I keep myself from falling asleep because my eyes open wide, because the information it changes things. It will change the future. And I learned to be able to have a discipline to understand that you have to look past certain things and look at the substance of things. You know what I mean? And so that's where I come from usually. And then the other thing that's important is it entertaining? And in my opinion, I've never seen any comic book movies like what Zack Snyder has done in terms of, especially the DCU. To me, he's outdone himself in every single DCU movie he's done. And unfortunately, we haven't still not seen what he can do with Justice League. I want to see it. I want to see it so bad. And we have to keep on keeping this movement going, because I want to see Justice League now like never before. I'm more interested in seeing Justice League than Aquaman, than Shazam, and even than Wonder Woman 84, even though Wonder Woman 84 is shaping up very nicely. I'm not interested in those movies as much. I also noticed that on Twitter, not a lot of people are, Aquaman's right around the corner. It's about like 3 months away, right? October, November, December, right? So it's 3 months away. And Shazam, I'm sorry, Aquaman is not getting a lot of views on Twitter, and that's not good. So I hope Warner Brothers is paying attention to what I'm saying, that you should probably put the Snyder, you guys put the Snyder Cut out before Aquaman. It'll actually help Aquaman, because the people who, you know, were disgruntled with you, they'll probably bitch and moan for a couple of days, and then they'll go and see Aquaman, and they'll give you a break. But if you don't put out this thing before Aquaman, my feeling is you're going to have a disgruntled set of people, and they're just going to badmouth your movie. Just badmouth it, badmouth it, badmouth Aquaman. And James Wan is just too good a director to get that kind of flack off of his film. And even if the Aquaman is Marvelized, which God forbid it is, people are still going to give you much more vibe, because they're going to say like, oh, we saw the Snyder Cut. So even if you saw, they're not going to, I'm pretty sure they're not going to patronize you, though. They're not going to go in the cinema and watch it 10 times. They're going to watch Aquaman probably once, and then they'll say, oh, okay, all right, it was Marvelized, fine. And they're just going to go their way, right? But at least they won't bash your movie. You won't have negative criticism. Most of the time, they're going to say, well, all right. I think some of them might even talk about it still. They might say, you know, look, they're trying to still go the Marvel route. Told them not to go to Marvel route. They're still going to Marvel route. Why? You know, some of them might do it, but it wouldn't be as intense and vociferous and vitriolic like if they were to not put out the Snyder Cut. It's just, to me, it's just suicide, but it is what it is. Lindsay Disney says Wonder Woman 84 will make $3.3 billion at the box office. Oh. That is very optimistic speech, Lindsay Disney. Lindsay Disney at that. That's interesting. I would say this. I would say I don't think so, but hey, you never know. You never know. I just don't think so, though. I can't see that happening. But you know. TNJL says, hey, before you go, Anson, have you checked out Samuel Utton's YouTube channel? His BvS analysis is good stuff, brother. I know you dig it. For real. Yeah. I am actually, I'm also attached to Samuel Utton on Twitter. I watch his feeds all the time. He talks about all kinds of things. So yeah, of course I have a channel. I haven't checked his videos on YouTube in a while, but I've been checking out his podcast. The podcast with Alexandra as well, who's part of that, and also what's her name? There's a set of them, you know, and there's also Film Exiles for you guys to check out. Film Exiles, they talk about different films and stuff like that, and it's cool too. Lindsay Disney says, wasn't Joss Whedon hired to fix the Snyder Cut of Justice League? Yep. That's correct, Lindsay. He was hired to fix it. He was really hired for reshoots, and he was really brought in to do over some script that Chris Terrio did. And that's what he really was brought on board from. He's brought on board by, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff Johns. Got him in there. And, you know, it is what it is. TNJL says, yeah, fix it for kids. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he fixed it for kids. I mean, it would still have been something kids would have gone and seen. They would probably just have to be supervised. It's PG-13. So, I think it's overrated to say that a movie's fixed for kids. What I mean by that is Warner Bros. Shouldn't have tried to target kids. Kids are going to love movies anyway. I remember myself watching Batman 1989, very brutal film, much more brutal than the films today. And I enjoyed it. I was a teenager, of course, and it was, of course, PG-13. It was PG, I think. Was it PG or PG-13? I can't remember. But PG used to be hard PG. Parental guide. PG-13 used to. Let me tell you guys about PG-13, okay? PG-13 was films where they showed a little bit of nudity in them. PG was films where they may have curse words in them. It was very violent, you know. So people don't understand. Rated R. Rated R was like shit. It was cursing, graphic violence, and that kind of stuff. You know, very graphic sexual scenes, that kind of stuff. So yeah, they've dumbed it down. They've dialed it down. Now you're watching MCU films and they're PG-13. I mean, they do still have cursing in them. They, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, that was what it was. So when I think Batman 1989 was PG. I think so. Dick Tracy, which was, go and watch Dick Tracy, the movie Dick Tracy. Lots of killing in that thing. It was a monster film, pretty much. I think it was PG-13. Yeah. So, you know, now, you know, you get a little bit of blood on the screen. They're like, oh, it's for the kids. No. I was a kid. I saw those things. So, no, it's not for the kids. Maybe you mean the little bitty babies, like 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, but not. And the 2, 3, and 4-year-olds today, they're much more advanced than the kids from back in the day. So maybe 1 month old, 2 month old. That's what we need to talk about. But no, kids can process things, and kids like anything. Kids like anything. The important thing I always tell people is you're making a movie where you must have parental guidance. And I think some of the movies today, they're pretty reckless. So supposedly movies for kids that are sort of kiddie compliant, but at the end of the day, they're doing more damage than much more serious movies where, you know, children would realize it's not a big joke to do this. Next thing they go and try it out on another kid, thinking it's funny, and in real life that could kill a kid. And then next thing, you know, disaster happens. So I think it's very important for, you know, Warner Brothers to stick with what Warner Brothers does. You don't have to try and cater to kids, because if the parents like the movie, they'll bring their kids along. They just have them as parental guidance. They just try and guide them parentally and ask them questions after. That's all, you know. And the PG-13 today is nothing like the PG-13 of yesteryear. Okay, just telling you. And I used to watch PG-13 movies. Okay. GoFilm says I have high expectations for the Snyder Cut. That it will be good as BvS and Man of Steel. I don't really care. Like, for me, it's not about expectations, about anticipation. I never have expectation for anything anyway. I try to leave my expectations at the door when I go to sit in to watch a movie, because I want to know what the movie's saying. I'm not interested in, you know, what I think about the movie. I don't have any thoughts about the movie. I just have a high anticipation for it. It's like, yeah, bring on the movie, you know, that kind of thing. And once I see the movie, then I give my assessment of it. But I try to enjoy myself throughout it, even though I may not show it in my face all the time. T&J Ellis says his video about Superman and Lex heliport scene is dope. All right, that's on top of LexCorp, huh? Interesting. Okay. T&J Ellis is kind of like the original Teen Titans and the now Teen Titans Go. There you go. Yeah. So, you know, Teen Titans Go is, you know, it's just a parody on Teen Titans. Yeah, there's a big difference. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. We spent quite a time. It's 3:12 a.m. in the morning. I've been talking for a pretty long period of time. It's time to go to sleep for me. I haven't gone to sleep yet, guys. So don't encourage me to stay up so late. It's nice seeing you guys. Share this video with other people. I know it's a long video, but nonetheless, share the video with everyone you know. And I'm coming with another video, maybe sometime tomorrow night or something. But I had to be busy dealing with a number of other things. So you may or may not see me have a video tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go forth, and remember, you know, acting out of guilt is not necessarily the best thing in the world, but more importantly, learn to forgive yourself, of course, but on top of that, understand once you're doing things out of love and you're trying your best, if you learn from your situation, that's more what's important. You cannot clean yourself. The only thing that can clean you is love, and that's to let the love flow through it. You can't clean yourself. I've tried. It doesn't work. All right, guys. Have a blessed night, man. Peace.